There's been an extraordinary meeting, hasn't there, Christopher, called for officials over there to discuss what's going to be happening, I'd imagine. What will be on the agenda at that meeting, are we expecting?
I don't know of any extraordinary meeting. They are more or less on a summer holiday here, so I didn't hear anything about that.
OK, well, that's what we've been told, is there's an extraordinary meeting for officials over there has been called in Brussels. You'd think it was probably to plan a strategy of some sort, how they're going to deal with the new Prime Minister. Because regardless of the complications, the UK and Boris Johnson are going to be desperately trying to find a way out of Europe. Is there a sense that he's going to maybe manage to pick a way through getting a deal sorted?
Well, one thing is clear, that the withdrawal agreement is not open for negotiation. The EU leaders said that 100 million times, and they will stick to that point. What's open for discussion is this political declaration, which is about the future trade relationship. It's a sketch, more or less, for the future trade talks. This text can be changed. And Brussels is open for any suggestion that Boris Johnson or his ministers will have. But the withdrawal agreement, with the backstop included, this will not be changed. That's a very clear message which sounds here for many months already.
The clear message that Boris Johnson and the people around him have said is the reason why he's different from Theresa May is he won't take no deal off the table. It's either renegotiate and find a way of having a deal that the Parliament can vote for and the country can get behind, or the UK just walks away. Do you think that people in Brussels believe him on that?
I think that's more or less a good summary of what's going to happen. It's going to be either this withdrawal agreement has to be approved by the Parliament. If not, then the UK will leave with no deal. But there's a third possibility, and that's another extension. And when push comes to shove, and when it gets to October, maybe even Boris Johnson will realize that the no deal is a big disaster for his own country, and I will not be surprised that he will think about another extension by that time, and a general election before that, maybe.
OK, well, let's go to Ireland now, because Conor Pope is there from the Irish Times. Obviously, you're one of our very close neighbours, Conor, and the appointment of Boris Johnson as Prime Minister will have huge ramifications for Ireland as well. What's the reaction been? I mean, I think I said on the introduction that the people were baffled that Boris has got this job.
Yeah, I think there's a broad sense of bemused dismay that Boris Johnson has been elected British Prime Minister. We've seen it coming, and it's almost like watching a good friend, a next-door neighbour, slowly drive their car towards a cliff edge. We know it's a bad idea. We know it's likely to have catastrophic consequences, but we are absolutely powerless to stop it. And I think one of the things that is of great concern in Ireland is the manner in which Boris Johnson has increasingly painted himself into a corner in order to appease hardline Brexiteers. And he has taken many of the options off the table, and that could have terrible consequences for both this country, Ireland, both north and south, and Britain. And I think one of the problems that a lot of people in Ireland have with his incoming premiership is that he seems to have a very poor understanding of the border. He's got a very poor understanding of the backstop, and he doesn't seem to have a very good understanding of the nuances that exist in Ireland. I mean, only last week we read a report in the Financial Times about how, when he was talking about our Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, he said, why can't he be called Murphy like the rest of them? And that kind of casual racism sits very uneasily with most Irish people. But the real difficulty here is that if he gets it wrong, then it will be terrible for the economy north of the border. It'll be terrible for the economy south of the border. And, you know, it will cause huge, huge job losses.
There's
it will
no question,
see
though,
the
Conor,
GDP
undoubtedly, Conor, there's no question that Boris Johnson will be very, very aware of what could happen if he gets this wrong. I mean, no one is going to be charged with sort of more responsibility right now than Boris Johnson. Well, I take what you're saying about him sort of seemingly not understanding about the border issue.
And being insulting.
But yes, quite. But that's not the first time Boris Johnson has said flippant things which, unfortunately, are offensive. Yeah, are offensive. But, of course, he is going to have to get a much better grip on that border issue, and he is going to have to try and come up with a solution. How can Boris Johnson persuade the people of Ireland that actually he can make this work for both your country and for the United Kingdom?
Well, I suppose the hope is that, and I mean no disrespect to him, and I think, like our Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, he congratulated Boris Johnson on his appointment, and he expressed hope that there would be a meaningful engagement very, very soon. So everyone hopes that he succeeds. Nobody wants Boris Johnson to fail at this because it is just too important. But I think the difficulty is that he has said so much that makes a potential deal seem very, very far away. Now, the only hope, if hope is the right word here, is that Boris Johnson tends to have a fairly casual relationship with the truth. And again, I mean no disrespect here, but like he has frequently said something and then done something very different. And I suppose the hope is that he has said certain things to ensure that he has been elected by the British Tory party, and now that he is elected, a sense of real politic will take hold, and he will understand the gravitas of the situation, and he will work towards doing a deal, because the deal will benefit the UK, it will benefit Ireland, and it will benefit the European Union.
Well, I think we all hope he does understand the gravitas of the situation. Good to talk to you. Let's talk to Ishaan Tharoor in Washington now. Your president seemed delighted that Boris Johnson was elected and even compared him to himself.
Well, that's not surprising for Trump. This whole process of Brexit has been a political foil that he's repeatedly turned to now and then. And to him, hailing Boris Johnson as Britain's Trump seems like a compliment. Of course, I'm not sure if Boris Johnson himself would have appreciated it very much, given the ways in which Trump is seen in Britain. But, you know, talking about the reaction here in this country, you know, if in a parallel universe, the ascent of Boris Johnson would have been striking and shocking to many in America. But in that parallel universe, President Trump would not be in the White House. And
Right.
And you know, your prime minister has a reputation for being an ostentatious showman. Well, let me introduce you to President Trump. Your prime minister has a record of saying bigoted or racist things. Well, let me introduce you to President Trump. Your prime minister has a record of exaggeration and perhaps lying. Well, certainly, let me introduce you to President Trump. So the rise of a figure like Boris Johnson hasn't really been that sort of startling. And the political conversation here on Wednesday in the United States will be entirely about Robert Mueller testifying in Congress. So it's not that big news. Of course, it'll be interesting to see how Trump and Johnson get along in the months ahead.
Yes, do you think he will listen to him? Will he see as a light mind? Because I guess what people over here hope is that we can get some kind of great deal with America for the future. But he didn't listen to Boris Johnson, did he, when he was pleading with President Trump over the Iran nuclear proliferation treaty? In fact, he seemed to ignore him.
Yeah, I think I would be, if I was Boris Johnson, I would be a bit wary about cuddling up to Trump. Right now, you're seeing a pretty interesting three-way dance between him, Trump, and Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage was there at this summit, at this right-wing youth summit where Trump spoke yesterday. And obviously, there's a whole tangled, complicated set of politics there. Trump's interests don't necessarily align with Boris Johnson's, and especially if Britain plays a role, the same role it's been playing as, on Iran, on its positions on Israel and the Palestinian issue, on climate change. If it doesn't really budge and move in a direction closer to Trump, you may not see such cuddliness from Trump in the months to come.
OK, well, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us in Brussels. Christopher Schmidt, in Dublin, Conor Pope, and in Washington there, Ishaan Tharoor. Doesn't seem like there's that much sort of positivity or hope, a lot of amusement, concern.
Strange, isn't it? I mean, usually the day you get elected, even just the day that you get into the position of being Prime Minister, there's an element of celebration. You then get a honeymoon period. Just nothing for Boris, is there?
It starts,
Nothing.
the hard work starts right now. But thank you very much to all three of those contributors. Good to have their thoughts this morning.